amazing work, and I am a real novice when it comes to these guys. So the theme for this turning, or this term's turning at the South Auckland Woodturners Guild, is Art Deco. Now, I'm not really sure what Art Deco is, but we're going to be doing Art Gearco instead, which is an inlaid bowl with a whole lot of gears and teeth on it like that. So it's my take on Art Deco will be Art Gearco. So to do this process, I start with a blank and I core it. So come along for the ride. I'm not going to be doing any zooming in or modifying the times on this, and I will be keeping it basically real time for the entire process. So forgive me, this is how I roll. I will first take the, turn down the top here, then I'll core out the bowl to give me a blank, and then we'll wait 9 months while that dries out, and we'll see how that goes. Also, I'll be playing with other cameras just so you guys get a better view occasionally as well. So, oops, don't dial 111. Video, go. So just making sure I got a marker there. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is just flatten the surface off. So now that we have that reasonably flat, we'll core it out. Coring machine. So I'll leave about 10% width here because the bowl's quite damp still. And this is going to be quite a shallow coring, so it'll give me a very shallow bowl. But I just need to measure a few things up first. Right. It's going to be very shallow coring. It's only going to be about a 60mm core by the time I've taken it all out. It's going to be quite a flat bowl. Yeah, out there, I reckon. So there are 5 points to tighten up when you do this coring. You can't forget this one here. And measure twice and cut once. So they'll give me still about 20 mils at the base there. Okay. And we don't do that very fast. We turn that back down to about 550. Didn't seem to jump there. Let's tighten that up again. Yeah, that seemed to jump, but it seems to be still slightly in place. So we'll just keep going and pretend that nothing happened, please. So, success, we've got that out, and we're going to go find it. So, we core it a blank, and normally we'd finish the bowl and make those widths nice and even so it would dry evenly. But today, this is about the core. So, coat it with end grain sealer, put it on the shelf, and let it dry for quite a few months until we get a dry core. We'd normally finish this off, thicken this out so it's nice and even. I'll do that later off camera. So let's just remove this. Oops. And this is a woodcut coring system. It's great. I've got it cheap, so that's good. So like the core that I've taken out, I would seal this with finish that off, seal it with end grain sealer, and put it on the shelf, and give it a few months to dry out. Yeah. notes. So if you're wondering, the reason I do coring is a couple. Less shavings to get rid of. I think maybe a little bit less time for me personally. It's quite quick just to core out a bowl. And also it gives you the potential of using this for something else, and that's what we're about to do today. And it's also possible that you can use it for like the bottom, so you get the grains all matching, and it's quite cool. If you want a pedestal bowl, and it's the same piece, so it can actually create quite a few different options for you. Some people, when they get really good at this, they put multiple cores in and get multiple nested bowls out of the system, which is very funky. I tend to be a bit lazy and only go for the one. But that being said, it does mean that you have some pretty cool things left over. This is the core I did when I did the drunken bowl. You can see the lines are still all there. And yeah, so when I want to, I can finish this off and create a second really nice, decent bowl out of that, and to match the first one. Right. Sometimes I haven't used a screwdriver. I've used more of a standard plate, and yeah, I'll bring them back a bit later. Now, due to the magic of TV, this has been cored quite a few months ago. It's got a few little dents in it I need to modify, but we're going to sort of turn this. I'm going to put a tenon on here so that I can then put a mortise, a groove in the top to pour the epoxy in. So let's just crank on and do that. Oops. The end plate first. You can see it's dried with a bit of a warp. I'm not sure if you can see that. We'll move that over to there. Oops, sitting on something. Yeah, you see that's a little bit warped. That looks flat. It is actually warped. So we'll just have to straighten that out. Okay. So first of all, we're going to put a tenon on here so that we can just flick it over and do the inside. That's all my notes. I'm going to have to pick those up, sorry team. Yep, second one. Right, excuse me, just picking up the notes. No, got to get rid of that. There's a slight nick in here that I need to get rid of, so I'll have to pull that right through. It's gone. Okay, so now we've still got the finished shape here. We could need to glue that, which I would do, and then finish it and sand it. But that's not why we're here today. We're here to watch a little bit of inlay work, really. So the next thing is to take this off here. We'll take the end plate off. I just need to get a drill. One moment. Oh dear. And we will take this off. Oh dear, this doesn't sound good, does it? Okay. So now we're going to mount this on the chuck and hope that I got the measurements right. It's looking good so far. And it back on here. And again, we'll have to flatten off the face, because so the job will be flatten off the face, and then we will cut a little channel in here for the inlay, for the epoxy inlay. So very much like when we started, we'll just put it back in here and we'll go. Okay, now we're going to put the channel in. Now you can use standard tools for this. I'm a bit of a lazy turner, and I prefer to use carbide tools wherever I can to get a nice flat edge. It may be best if the channel from the top is slightly, I don't know, that's concaved, convexed, just to allow the resin just to sit in it instead of allowing it to pop out at future days. So I will not just go straight in, I will actually just give it a little bit of a edge on both, just to create a slight dovetail in the channel. Okay, this feels about deep enough. Okay, so the next thing I do with my inlays is I will take it off here and I will freehand them a little bit next, because we're just going to paint stuff. And to do that, we will just have to change our scene a little bit. I'll just put a board here so we can do it all on the lathe and everyone's happy. So again, I'm going to have to sand this by hand. What we got here? So we'll just use some 120, 180 grit just to get in here and just to get rid of all that end grain issue. I don't know if you can see it's quite rough just here still, and there'll be end grain problems we need to resolve. So notes, back to notes. So the depth of the inlay will be very dependent on what you've got to put in here. Myself, I'm just using these very simple cogs. He says looking around, can't see them, and I will put them in. Fortunately, this is curry, and using the carbide tools, it's nice and sharp. It's actually giving me a really nice finish here, so my sanding won't be as detailed or as some of you probably would like to see. So I'll just keep it nice and flush, because the next thing we're doing is we're going to put a coat or two of paint in here. At least 2 coats, because you'll need to sand down between the coats. My experience is that after the first coat's been applied, the end grain starts to show itself. And I have forgotten my paintbrush, so I will be back in a sec. I'll cut this out of the movie so you don't have to watch me disappearing. Okay. All right, so I have my paint. This is, we'll call this Grinch green for want of a better expression. It's a small bottle of paint we bought to paint a Grinch on our fence this last Christmas. And it's quite bright, so it stands out quite nicely. And it's just a matter of painting this up. I'm not too worried about over painting, because I'll have to cut it anyway. And I just realized what I didn't do. Just realized I didn't mark number 1 on here. I'll show you what in a minute. And my rush to do things. I normally mark number 1 on the chuck so that I put the chuck back, or the piece back in the chuck in exactly the right spot. Now, the reason I take it out of the chuck is because sometimes the wood leaks, the epoxy, and it goes everywhere. I haven't experienced this personally myself, but I know that Terry has, and he still has a chuck that he can't undo or use, so I don't really consider chucks as a disposable piece of equipment like a piece of sandpaper, a consumable, so I choose to not take that risk. So yeah, your call, but normally I would find number 1 on here, and then just mark number 1, the line around, and number 1 again, so that I know it goes to number 1. Now I admit I'm a sloppy painter. I make no excuses, but that way we don't have any problems later on with not enough paint here. So painting, very important. My first set I used an undercoat, and I thought, well, the undercoat's important. I don't know why, but I did. And what happened was when you cut that edge just to make it all flush again, because things move, yeah, you could see the layer of white undercoat, then the layer of base coat underneath it, and you just get this little white ring around both edges, which is not something that you want. Oh, I don't think you should. Oops, drop that again. Sand, don't undercoat. You need to sand between the coats. I'm being very liberal with the paint here. Such a small quantity is needed. As I said, 2 coats are essential, but you definitely need to sand between coats because it definitely lifts. Yeah, and the better you can paint, the better the finished look will be, of course. So that's stage 1 of the inlay sorted, and there's painting it. Oh dear, it's not going on square. So this is Grinch green. I've got fire engine red and dazzle yellow. I like the bright colours. I've got black and white as well. So they're also an option. So put that aside, let it dry, which means I'm going to step off camera and grab one that I prepared earlier. I've got green on my hands. So you want a clean working environment for this, not above your lathe. You don't want the dirt and the dust to get in there. Sorry, there's probably a lot of noise. So this one's been painted twice. Fire engine red, hope you like it. And next job is to put the my gears in. So here's one of the first ones I did. I don't know if you can see this, but if you look very carefully here, you can see between the edge and the green, you can just see that white edge, and that is where you see the undercoat. Oh, this is me playing around with some dyes, getting some colours, because yeah, that was the other reason. The epoxy leached out into the bowl and went everywhere, which meant when trying to cut it and sand it back, the bowl got incredibly thin, and I was worried it was going to go through. So I decided this one could be sacrificed as a bit of a plaything. Yeah. So we have our tenon cut, a dovetail cut, sorry, and now it's just a matter of adding some gears. Now my wife bought these off Alibaba. She's a bit of a gearhead, and she thought these would look nice. They have all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And it's just a matter of sprinkling these around to provide the effect that you're after. I like them to be constant, so I will be using quite a few different ones, all sorts of gears. I was considering using real bite parts, but they are considerably bigger than these ones. Real bite parts might be quite good if you're just doing the bottom of a bowl. You carve it out and you put an indent in, and you pour that and you cover it with some epoxy there, and then finish it again. The only downside is with these small little containers, is that they're easily spilt. Because I'm doing it reasonably random, I'm not too worried about that. I might have to get some more. Now, if you're using an inlay that is a lot lighter than the epoxy, or lighter than the epoxy, it will float. So what you need to do then is glue this all in place with some super glue, because that'll be quite clear. But that's the only way you're going to stop it from floating away and then making a mess out of your epoxy. So that's the easy part, putting that all in there, putting an inlay in. If you're using these things, as I said, Alibaba was where my wife got these for me. She likes to shop online. So just buy them. They were quite cheap. I'm sorry, I can't remember how much they were, but just do a quick check. But the next part is where you want a dust-free environment, which is quite the opposite to my workshop. It is not a dust-free environment. As you can see. So we have that over here. And we have the epoxy. Now, epoxy is not your friend, really. I'll use an old screwdriver, just a stirring wand. I suppose you're supposed to do something better. I'm sorry if I muttered a lot to myself. I'm very nervous about doing this as a full unedited video, so I'm filling the spaces with jibber jabber. And I'm muttering a lot. That being said, I will try and put some music on for you to listen to when we're doing things that I am just sitting here concentrating on. So this epoxy is West System, I believe, and it is a 5:1 ratio. Now, excuse me, getting the ratio right is really important, because I didn't once. I migrated to the West from a different system. It used a 3:1 ratio, and I just assumed it was 3:1. Don't ask me why. But life got very exciting after I stirred it up and poured it into this goblet I was making, and it got extremely hot really fast. I thought we were going to lose. The heat was just amazing, so we took it outside, dropped the whole thing into a bucket of water. Fortunately, it didn't go over the top of the goblet that I was making, so it actually kept it cool. It didn't seem to get any stress in terms of cracks, which I was really pleased about. So the pour was a success, just the panic in the middle was really not good. Don't want to go there. So this one here is quite a small pour, so I don't need a lot of epoxy, but it is a 5:1 ratio. So I weigh it. There are pumps. Oops. There are pumps that are available. Okay, it says 101 grams. So I just need to know, I need to put 20 grams of this in here, and I can tear that out, and we put 20 in. And I hope that's enough. Going by my last pour, I think it is. Okay, 20. So just slightly less than 100. You can see that. It definitely says 20 grams on there. Let's take that aside. I bought the scales for a different purpose. It wasn't to measure epoxy, but there you go. So next job is stir this, and my good friend Terry, who I talk to quite regularly about things that I don't know because he does, says stir for 5 minutes. So I will just rerun through a lot of what I wrote down here while I stir, so that we can right, read the instructions. Ratios are very important. Give example. I've given the example. It was a disaster almost. I weigh because I have scales ready. Pump options are available. Yeah, mark and take out of the chuck. Very important. The I don't want to waste $200 on a new chuck if I can avoid it. Temperature dependent, so I've used epoxy in the middle of summer on some of my bigger things, and it gets heat, cracks very quickly. It would be nice if we could just keep a nice controlled environment for this. So temperature dependent for us in Auckland, midsummer, when my workshop probably gets up to close to 30 degrees, is probably not the best to pour epoxy in today. Probably more like 20, 22, so probably not so bad. Also, the paint will help with leaching. As I showed in that other one, the epoxy ran, so maybe if I get 2 or 3 coats of paint in there, it'll help prevent a little bit of that leaching with the inlay. And last of all, did I say read the instructions? Yeah, it's really important to read the instructions and stir the death out of it. If you want to add colour, mix first, add colour, mix again, and then pour. Right, we'll have an interlude with some music here. I don't know how long I've stirred this for. I'm not going to sing for you. Now, at the Woodturners Guild, South Auckland Woodturners Guild, they're very good at giving instantaneous feedback, so that's probably my biggest fear. While I'm doing this, they'll be give me some very good instructions on ways to improve the method. So probably not a fear, but it also is very funny if you're in the audience. Some of these guys are really know how to give advice in the best way possible, so that everybody learns and nobody feels put to shame. So what else do we know? Right, so on the bigger pieces, when I've made some bigger pieces with epoxy, I've poured straight onto the piece without coating them first. I think in future I'll coat the edges when I'm doing some bigger pieces like that petal flower one I did with epoxy, just clear epoxy to start with. And the main reason, well, 2 reasons. One is to stop the leaching, and the second is to prevent the colour. The wood I used was a very yellow wood, and it seemed to have leached into my blue epoxy to create green swirls, which is a bit odd. Right, I'm going to say that this is time's up, and I'm going to very gently pour this. Actually, I'm going to put this aside first. Now you probably can't see that very well, but it's full of bubbles, and that is why people use vacuum chambers. So they can pop it in a vacuum chamber, and it's all good. I don't have a vacuum chamber. And you're wondering why I'm shaking? So am I. So you can see here, I'm going to grab the camera. I can grab this camera. You see all around that bubbles are starting to appear on the top, so this is why I bought the flamethrower here. It just basically pops the bubbles. There is a... But you can see in there still are layers of bubbles that are a problem I have. And honestly, that's why a vacuum chamber would be really good. I could just pull a vacuum on this, it would suck the bubbles would come out, and it would be, well, we do it on this first, and it wouldn't be a problem. Also, the flamethrower only really just pops the bubbles on top. It doesn't draw the bubbles out, as the best I know of. It does help create a lovely finish. Where are we at? Okay, we've gone over that. All right, just pack a few things up while it creates some more bubbles. Okay, so you don't want to go too crazy with the heat. It'll obviously scorch the paint. Done that, and that'll create bubbles in here with the paint lifting, and we don't want to do that. So what we'll do now is I'm just going to take a second. I'm going to move this to another location where hopefully the chips from the rest of the turning are not going to destroy it. I'd normally pour this on the workbench and not on the lathe. All right. So that just dribbled on the floor as I was moving it and created a bit of mess. Never mind, we will carry on from here. Okay, done page one. So the good news is I did another one a couple of days ago. As you can see, I used white paint. It's nowhere near as bright, but I don't know whether you can see that, but the white paint and the epoxy is too close, and it's actually made the epoxy look a little bit dull compared to the white, whereas the other colour, like the blacks and the reds, you can, that epoxy tint seems to go. I don't know if you can feel this, I'm sure you can't, but there's also a lip here now. The epoxy didn't quite get up to the top, so I've just got to cut that flat and core out the centre. There's a potential to core out, this is another core, but today I'll just create a bowl. I haven't really finished the outside that well, but again, this piece of kauri, I should be able to finish all this. but we'll just turn this down. I use carbide tools for this cutting. My experience to date is I have to go really slow to get the strands, otherwise it just shatters like glass or a Pyrex bowl exploding, and it puts big chips into the epoxy, and then you've got to go further down. You can just see here and here, and that line just there, that goes on number 1. So I forgot to do that, which meant things didn't line up so well on my chuck. All right. So I use the carbide tool to knock this edge off, and we'll straighten this edge up, and I'll be going very slow because I really don't like all that epoxy. The epoxy, if it chips, it feels like you're getting sanded with really high-speed glass. It's horrible on your hands. If it's stringy, you have to be careful. I've talked to one person when she was turning, and she said she almost broke her wrist because all the strands wrapped around the pieces it was turning, wrapped around her wrist, and bang. So please don't do that either. Yeah, so we still have to take it. We still have to take a bit more down here because there's still a lip just there. Still got a little lip, a little bit more. Okay. Alright. So now we've cut that down. I can't even feel that, so it's pretty smooth. I'll hollow it out. And we'll use my favourite tool for that, which is the large hollowing tool. Large bowl gouge. That's looking pretty rugged in there. I need to sharpen the tools. That's looking pretty rough indeed, so that's probably me just being too aggressive and having too blunt a tool. Excuse me. Okay, got rid of most of that roughness. Sharp tools, speed. It's a lot better. So those edges are about the same. It's the hollowing. Okay, to go at the bottom. Okay, good. A bit rougher there. Okay. Okay, so we've sort of finished the demo now. There's a lot of sanding and fixing and removing of tenons left to go, but basically we've got the basic shape of the bowl sorted. I'll just grab the finished product. So back to this. I mean, I purposely did one black and one white to see what the difference was, just to have it. If you look very closely, you'll see there's still the odd dot where I've had trouble with the bubbles not getting out of the resin pour. I also still have a little bit of tear out in the end grain on both the exterior and the interior. I sanded it to 2000 from think 80, and that was mainly just to get this looking really good. It's not as polished as I've seen other turners, but it's as good as I can do at the moment. And yeah, so that's where we're at. So this one here, I have a slightly thicker edge here because I went for the slightly Art Deco-ish look of the grips. I don't know what you call them, but that's my Art Gearco bowl. I'll have a whole lot soon because I've got to do this whole demo back for the Auckland Woodturners Guild, South Auckland Woodturners Guild later this week. So please comment on this. Tell me with areas I can improve. Any other information on what I've been doing that I can explain as I go would be really appreciated. Any feedback, positive, critique, love it. So I'm going to basically just pop this video up, mostly done. I might chop the piece where I had to wander to the house and get the brush back again off, but I think I will just leave it as. I will switch between the cameras depending on where. Sorry that that camera's so far away, but I need to be able to talk and do this in one piece. I will try and use the zoom post digitally, maybe to bring it in occasionally. This camera here, we hopefully get a nice close-up of the work I'm doing, of the epoxy pour and everything else. So thank you for coming along. I really appreciate it. Remember, subscribe, comment, or comments, plural, would be really appreciated.